I was always the other daughter, the one who didn't need constant attention. While my younger sister Sarah battled asthma, I fought a different battle at home. Every morning began the same way. Mom rushing to Sarah's room to check her breathing while I got myself ready for school. "Sarah, honey, how are you feeling today? Let me check your temperature," she'd say, her voice dripping with concern. "Don't forget your inhaler. Do you want me to call Dr. Thompson?" I remember standing in the doorway, already dressed and ready for school, watching this daily ritual unfold. My lunch was always whatever I could throw together, usually just a sandwich and an apple. Sarah, on the other hand, got specially prepared meals with all her favorite foods. Dad wasn't much different. He worked extra hours to cover Sarah's medical bills, and when he was home, his focus was solely on her. "How's my little fighter doing?" he'd ask, completely bypassing me on his way to Sarah's room. This routine continued year after year while Sarah visited specialist after specialist. I learned to take care of myself. I did my homework without help, packed my own bags for school trips, and figured out how to handle teenage problems on my own. Mom never worked. She was too busy being Sarah's personal nurse and advocate. By my senior year of high school, I had perfect grades and a clear plan. I applied for scholarships behind my parents' backs. They were too preoccupied with Sarah's latest health scare to even think about college applications. The day I got my full scholarship letter, I ran home, eager to share the news. But when I found Mom in the kitchen preparing Sarah's allergen-free dinner, her response was as simple, "That's nice, dear. Could you set the table? Sarah needs to eat on schedule with her new medications." In that moment, everything became clear to me. I would never be the priority in this house, no matter what I achieved. But instead of letting that crush me, I let it fuel me. I didn't need their attention or approval. I had something better. I had my freedom. The day I left for college, Mom was too wrapped up in Sarah's latest health crisis to even say goodbye properly. Dad just handed me some cash and said, "Drive safe." College felt like a dream. I threw myself into my studies, made real friends for the first time, and graduated with honors. Afterward, Reynolds and Company hired me straight out of college, and suddenly I was earning more than I'd ever dreamed of. I hadn't heard much from my parents during college, just the occasional text from Mom asking if I was doing okay before immediately launching into updates about Sarah's health. But that all changed once I started working. 6 months into my job, I got the first call. "Erica, honey." Mom's voice was unusually sweet, a tone I'd never heard directed at me before. "Your father and I are in a bit of a tight spot. Sarah needs some new treatments, and with the medical bills." I cut her off. "How much do you need, Mom?" "Oh, just $2,000. We'll pay you back next month," she said. They never did pay me back, not for that loan, or the next one, or the one after that. But honestly, I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had something they needed, and it gave me a strange sense of satisfaction. Then I met Mike. He made me laugh, always seeing the bright side. We dated for a year before he proposed in the break room, the ring hidden in a coffee cup. When we told my parents we were getting married, Mom's first response was, "Oh, but Sarah's having some health issues right now. We might not be able to contribute much." "We don't need anything," I said firmly. "We're handling it ourselves." And we did. We had a small, perfect wedding with just our closest friends. Mike and I paid for everything ourselves, took a modest honeymoon to the beach, and came back ready to build our life together. Within 2 years, we had enough for a down payment on a small apartment. 3 years later, it was paid off completely. "We should have a baby," Mike said one night as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset. I looked at him, this wonderful man who gave me everything I'd never had growing up: unconditional love, support, and a true partnership. "Yes," I said, "we should." Emily was born on a spring morning, perfect and healthy. Mike was the proudest dad, taking pictures of every little thing she did. When she was 2 months old, he got a big promotion at work. "Just one business trip," he told me, kissing Emily's forehead. 3 days in Chicago, then I'm all yours again. I drove him to the train station that morning. It was the last time I saw him. The call I received wasn't from Mike. It was from the railway company. There had been an accident. The train had derailed. There were no survivors. The weeks after Mike's death passed in a blur. I moved through my days like a ghost, just going through the motions of feeding Emily, changing her, trying to keep both of us alive while feeling half dead inside. The insurance company called with details about Mike's life insurance policy, but money wasn't what I needed most. I needed help. "Mom," I said over the phone, my voice cracking. "I can't do this alone. Could you help me with Emily? Just for a few months while I get back on my feet. I'll pay you whatever you want." There was a long pause. "Oh, honey," Mom said, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. "But you know I'm not as young as I used to be. Taking care of a baby is so demanding. And with my blood pressure, I just can't risk my health. Maybe you could hire someone. You have the insurance money now, right?" Her words hit me like a slap. I thought about all those years she devoted to Sarah's care, how she'd never worked because Sarah needed her constant attention. But now, when her other daughter needed her, when her granddaughter needed her, Mom wasn't there. "Yeah," I said flatly, "I'll figure something out." And I did. I found a wonderful nanny named Maria who loved Emily like her own. The insurance money allowed me to afford the best care for my daughter, and slowly, we settled into a new normal. Emily grew from a baby into a toddler, showing more of Mike's smile every day. Then came the call about Sarah's engagement. "Your sister is marrying James Peterson," Mom gushed over the phone. "His family owns that big real estate development company. Can you believe it?" "That's great," I said, watching Emily stack blocks on the living room floor. I was happy for Sarah, but the next call wasn't quite as joyful. Dad sounded stressed. "Erica, we need to talk about Sarah's wedding," he said, his voice tight. "We're taking out a loan using the house as collateral." When he told me the amount, I felt sick. "Dad, no," I protested. "That's your house, your retirement security. You can't risk that for one day." "Now listen here," he snapped, his tone sharpening into that familiar sternness I remember from childhood. "We can't have the Petersons thinking we can't give Sarah a proper wedding. We've already signed the papers." I tried to reason with him, offering to help pay for a more modest celebration, but Mom was offended. "You don't understand, Erica," she said, her voice soft but insistent. "This is Sarah's big day. She deserves her dream wedding. We can't have her future in-laws thinking we're common." I thought about my own wedding, small, modest, and perfect. Mike and I had paid for everything ourselves, proudly starting our life together without debt. But of course, Sarah needed something grander. Her wedding was exactly what you'd expect: extravagant, over the top, and according to Mom, absolutely perfect. Then Sarah moved away with James to Boston, and suddenly, my parents' perfect daughter wasn't so perfect anymore. "Can you believe she won't even take our calls?" Mom sobbed into the phone one evening. "We took out that loan for her wedding, and now she won't even help with the payments." I wanted to say, "I told you so," but instead, I just said, "That must be hard." Gradually, my parents began calling more often, not just when they needed money. They wanted to see Emily, invited us for Sunday dinners, and even remembered my birthday for the first time in years. It felt nice, like maybe we could finally be a real family again. I started helping them out, paying bills here and there, buying groceries for Dad and Mom. For their 35th wedding anniversary, I surprised them with a 2-week vacation to Florida and a new car for Dad. "You're such a good daughter," Mom said, actually hugging me for the first time in years. Then Dad got sick, really sick. Something with his heart kept him out of work for months. One evening, they asked me to come over after Emily's bedtime. "We're going to lose the house," Dad said, his voice weak. "The loan payments without my salary." Mom was crying. "We don't know what to do, Erica. We're already behind." "Move in with us," Mom suggested, her voice full of desperation. "You could help with Emily after school, and you could help with the loan payments. Please, sweetheart, we don't want to lose our home." I thought about my apartment, the independence I had built for myself and Emily, and the life I had worked so hard for. "I don't know, Mom," I hesitated. "It's an hour commute to work from here." "Please," Dad said, and I saw real fear in his eyes. "We'll make it work. Emily would love having her grandparents around." They were right about that part. When I told Emily we might move in with Grandma and Grandpa, her whole face lit up. Within a month, we were moved in. I found good tenants for my apartment, a young couple with steady jobs who signed a year-long lease. Emily was overjoyed, running around the house exploring every corner like it was a magical castle. I took over the loan payments and most of the household expenses. Mom seemed to transform overnight into the grandmother she'd never been before, picking Emily up from school, helping her with homework, making her favorite snacks. "Look what Grandma made for you," she'd say, pulling fresh cookies from the oven. Emily would beam, and I try not to remember all the times I'd come home to an empty kitchen as a child. For a while, everything seemed to work. Dad's health improved, though slowly. I adjusted to the long commute, telling myself it was worth it to see Emily so happy. Every month when I made the loan payment, I reminded myself that I was helping my parents keep their home. But there was always this nagging feeling at the back of my mind, a voice that whispered, how long can this last? When will the other shoe drop? After Dad returned to work, I noticed Mom started making excuses about watching Emily. My back hurts today, Erica, she'd say. I'm not as young as I used to be. It's so exhausting keeping up with a child her age. Finally, one morning, she just came out with it. I think you should hire a nanny, she said. I can't handle this anymore. So, I hired Karen, a sweet older lady who clicked with Emily immediately. Every morning, I'd leave for my hour-long commute, wondering why I was still living in my parents' house when I had a perfectly good apartment across town. But every time I mentioned moving back, Mom would bake her famous apple pie, the one Emily loved, and say, oh, but we love having you both here. Don't we live so well together? Emily would beam, her face covered in apple filling, and I'd push down my frustration for another month. This went on for 2 years. Then one evening, Mom and Dad sat me down after Emily went to bed. Honey, Mom started, her eyes already welling up. We still have 2 years left on Sarah's wedding loan. Dad jumped in. We know it's a lot to ask, but could you stay until it's paid off? We're so close to being free of it. I thought about the exhausting commute, the way my life had been put on hold. But then I thought about Emily's happy face when she talked about living with her grandparents. Okay, I said, finally. 1 more year. I called my tenants to extend their lease, and then came the day that changed everything. After another long day at work, I walked up to the house, only to be met by Sarah standing in the doorway, her very pregnant belly prominent. Move away from the door, Sarah, I said. Mom, she called out over her shoulder, you're letting in a draft. With a smirk, she stepped aside. Well, look who's here. Inside, it felt like stepping back in time. Mom fluttered around Sarah like a worried hen, adjusting pillows, checking her temperature, asking if she needed anything. I made your favorite dinner, Sarah, and there's herbal tea for the baby. I barely sat down before Sarah dropped her bombshell. I've decided to have the baby here, she announced, so you and Dad can help with the newborn. Mom's face lit up like a Christmas tree. Of course we will. We'll help with everything. I froze. My fork was halfway to my mouth when the memory hit me like a punch to the gut. Me alone with 3-month-old Emily, desperately calling for Mom after Mike's death, and hearing her refuse to help because it was too much on her health. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw it with perfect clarity. Nothing had changed. Nothing would ever change. Sarah would always be the one who needed them, and I would always be the one expected to understand. For the next 2 weeks, I watched history repeat itself. Mom waited on Sarah hand and foot, bringing her breakfast in bed, scheduling doctor's appointments, stocking up on Sarah's favorite foods. The monthly apple pies that had once been her way of keeping Emily and me there vanished completely. The final straw came one evening when I overheard Mom and Sarah discussing nursery plans for my room and Emily's room. I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into the living room where they were all gathered. So that's it, I said, voice shaking with fury. You're just going to pretend the last few years never happened, that Sarah didn't abandon you with a massive loan that I've been helping pay. Sarah rolled her eyes. Oh, here we go, shrieked Erica to the rescue. Sarah, honey, Mom fussed. Don't get upset. It's not good for the baby. No, let's talk about this, I pressed. Let's talk about how you mortgaged your house for her wedding, and then she disappeared. Let's talk about how I've been paying that loan while she was off living her best life. That's none of your business, Sarah snapped. Nobody asked you to pay anything. If you're so unhappy here, why don't you just go back to your precious apartment, Erica? Mom cut in, practically pushing me toward the door. Why don't you run to the store? We need a few things. It'll give everyone a chance to calm down. I felt like a child being sent to my room. But I went. Maybe the fresh air would help me think clearly. 20 minutes later, I returned with the groceries, and the sight that greeted me stopped me cold. Emily was sitting on the front steps, crying, surrounded by hastily packed bags and boxes, our belongings scattered on the ground. Mommy, she sobbed, running to me. Aunt Sarah yelled at me. She said we had to get out, and when I started crying, she scared me and pushed all our stuff out here. Something inside me snapped. I stormed into the house, fury boiling over. How dare you? I shouted. How dare you treat my daughter like this? Erica, calm down, Dad started. No, I will not calm down, I roared. For years I've watched you favor Sarah. When Mike died and I needed help with Emily, you couldn't be bothered. But Sarah snaps her fingers and you jump. I've paid your bills, your loan, helped save your house. And this is how you repay me? By throwing my child out. Now listen here, Mom began, but I cut her off. No, you listen. I've spent my entire life being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who's supposed to understand when Sarah needs something. I've given you everything, and you've given me nothing but scraps of attention when Sarah wasn't around to demand it all. I grabbed the grocery bags and hurled them across the room. Cans rolled across the floor, eggs cracked, and vegetables scattered everywhere. Mom gasped, Sarah smirked, and Dad's face turned red with rage. Get out, he roared. Get out of our house, and don't you dare come back. You're no daughter of ours. Mom added, her voice cold as ice, we never want to see you again. I stood there, breath heavy, looking at the people who were supposed to be my family. I felt a weight settle deep in my chest, a combination of anger, hurt, and a quiet kind of resolve. Without a word, I turned and walked out, closing the door on 28 years of trying to be enough. Outside, the cool night air hit me like a slap. The bags and boxes, hastily packed in the chaos of the evening, felt like a reminder of everything I'd lost. Emily's small hand gripped mine, her face streaked with tears, and it shattered something in me. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, trying to think through the fog of emotions. Our apartment was rented out for another year, and I couldn't just ask the tenants to leave. Legally, I had to give them 3 months' notice. I called a nearby hotel and ordered an Uber XL to help with the bags. Later, as Emily slept in the hotel room, I sat alone in the dark, scrolling through listings on my laptop, searching for some kind of solution. The next morning, a furnished month-to-month rental popped up, only 15 minutes from my office. It wasn't ideal, but it would work. I called Lisa, my tenant, while Emily ate her breakfast. Hi Lisa, I hate to do this, but I need to give you notice. Some family circumstances have changed. Lisa was understanding. Of course, we'll start looking right away. Take care, Erica. The next few months felt like living in suspended animation. The temporary apartment didn't feel like home, not truly. Emily was quieter than usual, processing everything in her own way. But as time passed, the rhythm of our life started to settle. Then, finally, Lisa called to let me know they found a new place. 3 months after everything fell apart, Emily and I walked back into our apartment. The moment I turned the key and stepped inside, a wave of relief washed over me. This was our home, safe, stable, no drama, no walking on eggshells. Emily ran from room to room, rediscovering old toys and books. That night, after she was asleep, I sat down and took a real look at our finances. We were doing well, better than I expected. Without the drain of supporting my parents, I had extra money every month. I opened a savings account for Emily's college fund and set up automatic transfers. We found our rhythm again. Emily went back to her old school where her friends welcomed her with open arms. I threw myself into work, earning a promotion I'd been too distracted to pursue when we were living with my parents. 6 peaceful months passed. It was just us. No guilt, no complicated family dynamics. And then, one Sunday morning, the knock came. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I checked the peephole, my heart froze. My parents stood on the other side of the door. They were holding a baby. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Erica, please, my mom began, tears immediately welling in her eyes. We need your help. My dad, older and more broken than I remembered, nodded gravely. Sarah, she's gone. They told me the whole story. Sarah's husband had discovered she was cheating. A DNA test proved the baby wasn't his, and he'd divorced her, refusing responsibility for the child. Now, Sarah had dropped the baby off with our parents and disappeared. We can't do this alone, Erica. We need you to move back in. Help with the loan payments. Help with the baby, Mom pleaded. I'm too old to care for an infant. I looked at them, really looked at them, at my mom's manipulative tears, at my dad's desperate eyes, at the innocent baby in their arms. And then, in a flash, it all became crystal clear. No, I said quietly. Mom's tears stopped abruptly. What? She asked, voice sharp. I won't help you, not this time. Her voice rose in indignation. How can you be so heartless? Your own family will be out on the street. We'll lose the house, all because you're too selfish to help. Several neighbors' doors opened, curious faces peeking out. You want to do this here, Mom? I asked, my voice steady. Fine, let's talk about how you refused to help me when Mike died and I had a 3-month-old. Let's talk about how you mortgaged your house for Sarah's wedding, only for her to abandon you with that loan. Just like she's abandoned her baby now. This isn't about me being heartless. It's about you finally facing the consequences of your choices. Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came out. My dad stepped forward, angry. How dare you? How dare you? I interrupted. You created this situation with your constant favoritism. You taught Sarah she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. And now you want me to clean up your mess again. Not happening. Were your parents? Mom wailed. No, I said firmly. You're Sarah's parents. You made that clear the night you threw my daughter out onto the street. Now please, leave. Forget my address. Forget my phone number. Forget I exist. Just like you did for most of my life. I closed the door with a finality that rang in my ears. On the other side, Mom continued to scream, but it didn't touch me anymore. Emily was standing in the hallway, watching me. Are you okay? She asked, her small voice full of concern. I walked over and hugged her tight. Yes, baby, I'm better than okay. I'm free. That was the last time I saw my parents. I don't know what happened to them or Sarah or the baby. Sometimes Emily asks about them, and I tell her the truth. That sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from people who hurt you, even if they're family. These days, life is good. Emily is thriving at school. I love my job, and we're building the kind of life I've always dreamed of, one based on real love, not obligation or manipulation. Late at night, sometimes I look at old family photos, and a twinge of sadness hits me for what could have been. But then I look at Emily growing strong and secure, knowing she's loved unconditionally. And I know I made the right choice.